Hey everyone, welcome to the 4th episode of the Talking Cardboard Late Night Podcast. My name is Nick, and I'm joined by Cory.
Hello.
And John.
Hey everyone.
And we are Talking Cardboard, a group of guys that love to talk about board games and sometimes actually play them. If you are listening to this episode as a podcast, please note we also have a YouTube video of the podcast on our Talking Cardboard YouTube channel that includes our faces as well as other visual content of the games we will be discussing. In this episode, we'll talk about games we played recently, overview Talking Cardboard's trip to 2DCon, and tackle the question of the week: should board games stores charge people when using their store space to play games? So without further ado, let's get into our first segment of the episode, which is what have we just been up to in our regular day-to-day lives. And I'll start off with saying that this past weekend, I had my first ever vacation with our baby.
Wow.
As you probably may have, if you've been listening to our episodes, you knew I've had my first child was born a few months ago now. And we did our first kind of staycation actually with the baby and went to a hotel, which was where 2DCon was located at, which I'll talk more about later. But I just wanted to touch on the fact that it was the first trip we took with a baby, which was a unique experience for me. Changing a diaper in a hotel room is a little different than at home. And we also had our dog with us, so that added an interesting element. But it worked out. I think the baby, her name's Vay, had a great time as far as I could tell. So hopefully we have another trip planned shortly. Cory, what have you been up to lately?
Not much. I mean, I'll get into some of the games that I've been playing on my own a little bit later in this episode. So I've been doing some of that. I just don't want to spoil it yet. But yeah, other than that, just a lot of other things going on, non-board game related. It's just been a busy end of the summer, and I'm looking forward to the fall when things start winding down a little bit, and we can get back into a normal or a more normal routine, hopefully.
Yep. And what about you, John?
Yeah, kind of echo what Cory said. I guess September's like at the end of the week, so that's crazy. But mostly I've been hanging out with my son or playing World of Warcraft Classic or Baldur's Gate 3. That's where all my time goes.
I was going to mention I have gotten into Baldur's Gate 3 myself.
Yeah, I saw you log in the other day.
Yeah, I have some friends with college that roped me into trying a game of that, which it's cool. Like, it's maybe not exactly my cup of tea of game. I think it's partly due to the fact that when you're playing multiplayer with how that game is designed, I feel like everyone's just doing their own thing, and I'd prefer a multiplayer experience where you're all like kind of doing every single thing together because so
you don't like multiplayer solitaire Euro games? I mean, Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what it's like. It's like you're playing a multiplayer Euro style game where you're kind of doing your own thing, and but it's cooperative anyway. But a cool game nonetheless. All right, so let's move into our next segment, which is what games have we been playing recently? What board games have we been playing recently? And as a group first, John and I originally had ambitious plans to go to this first Minnesota annual muster event in Minnesota, where a group of board gamers called the First Minnesota get together at a hotel in southern Minnesota for a weekend to play a bunch of heavy strategy and war games. And we ended up having our own First Minnesota muster at my home instead, because with a baby now, for myself and John as well, it's a little difficult to plan those ambitious trips. So with that said, the first game that we got to the table was one of my favorites, which was Tide of Iron, and I was happy to finally introduce that to John because this is a game that's been high on my list of board games for a long time, and it's a tactical war game and hex-based combat. It's heavier than Memoir 44, lighter than a lot of the other tactical war games that are out there, and it unfortunately has been out of print for a long time, published by Fantasy Flight, originally in 2007, I guess. So, John, what was your first impression of Tide of Iron?
I really like Tide of Iron. It kind of scratched all those World War II gameplay itches for me. I like assembling the squads together, how there's just enough uniqueness to the different units that you're piecing together for each scenario, versus like, infantry versus the lead infantry, and then having your commander and whatnot. So I thought it was pretty cool for trying it for the first time.
Yeah, it's I definitely hope to get it to the table soon again to try some of the different scenarios. We started with kind of a more basic scenarios, no basic scenario, no vehicles or anything like that, to keep it as simple as possible. But that was the first game that we played at our own first annual muster, and then the other game I was able to wrangle John into was Warfighter WW2, which is a card-based World War II. I would still kind of say tactical fighting game, because there is a linear element of location in the game, and this is by DVG, which is a publishing company that almost does essentially exclusively war games. And you basically have a mission card that could be that the core box comes with like 10 random missions, like blowing up or 10 random missions that kind of set the guidelines of the mission in terms of the length and how many points of equipment and the weapons you can carry. And then you also pick a random objective, which could be blowing up a tank, clearing out a home, rescuing someone. And then you go about building up your squad of soldiers, and some soldiers are player controlled soldiers, meaning you actually have a deck of cards that you use to that you can use to add extra dice to your attacks or help heal soldiers. These action cards are very powerful, but player soldiers cost a lot more points. And then you have non-player soldiers, which are kind of like almost like AI kind of soldiers that can take hits for you, but aren't as effective as your player soldiers because they don't come with a deck or hand of cards. And as you reveal, you go through a linear map. You can only go forward or backwards, and whenever you find a new location, you spawn new enemy soldiers and represented by cards, and try to take them out as you proceed to your objective. So this is also a game that's been high on my personal list of top board games for a while, because I find the rules relatively intuitive. And I hadn't played the game for a long time, but when I took it out to play with John, most things came back to me pretty quickly. John, what was your kind of thoughts on Warfighter?
Another pretty solid game. I think my only complaint was that it gets a little muddied when you start going to the different locations and progressing towards the ultimate goal. Just trying to keep track of the enemies that are on the board and where they are. But other than that, I like setting up my squad and allocating my resources, and actually going through the combat, even though it was very difficult to actually score hits on that at times.
Yeah, a big part of the game, which I guess is probably thematic, is you're not killing enemy soldiers very often. You're just suppressing them, which suppressing them still is very important. It's just not as useful as actually killing the enemy. But I'd imagine in World War II, it's not like every time you were shooting at someone, you were actually killing them. So one thing to point out is DVG does actually have a Kickstarter, I think live right now as of the recording of this episode, for a Vietnam themed version of their Warfighter series. So definitely check that out if you're into Vietnam, because if it includes the basic structure of Warfighter is pretty sound, and with the Vietnam version we'll just have a Vietnam skin to it. So with that said, we'll move on then to games we played individually over the last few weeks. I'll actually jump to Cory to talk about some of the games that he's been playing. So Cory, why don't you go ahead and let us know what games you've been getting to the table?
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly, I got a little bit back into trading card games here again with Lorcana, or Disney Lorcana. I've been having a lot of fun with that. Came up with a video here on the channel here as well, opening some booster packs. Haven't gotten anything too great out of the booster packs yet. I don't know if they're rigged or what's going on, but you see all these other people on other channels pulling the enchanted rares, and I have not gotten myself one of those yet, but I pulled a couple decent, like $40, $45 cards, that sort of thing, which is I'm not going to go and sell them, but it's kind of fun when you pull the big guys, the big super rares and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of resemblance to Magic the Gathering. One of my all-time favorite card games, and kind of evolves on the core mechanisms that Magic introduced all those years ago, and just kind of made some things better. I mean, obviously, Magic is still nostalgic for what it is, but they've had 35 years or 30 35 years to kind of evolve on it, and that's what they did. So I'll kind of let John later on go into more details on that. But
I got no more details, but yeah, very similar to Magic. Less interaction during other players' turns. They kind of remove hints. Yeah, right. You're kind of just doing your thing on your turn and trying to counter your opponent's plan back and forth, instead of having things like instant speed cards that you're playing, which honestly is kind of refreshing, because with Magic, one of the big things is you start throwing out all these instants, and then you have this stack that you have to figure out how to resolve and what happens, and then you get weird combos that essentially break the game. So no, I think it's a nice take, and I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of the Disney IP, but it's been enjoyable the few times I've played also over the last week. So
yeah.
Not a fan of the Disney IP in general, or just for a board game, John?
In general, although I'll have to be watching that and all that stuff with my son, I'm sure. I'd rather be watching Star Wars or Die Hard.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, as my daughters have been growing up too, I've been watching more and more Disney, and I'm more into it for that reason. Like Moana, watched a bunch of Moana and other, movies too. So
one of the best cards right now is Moana.
Yeah, I have a Moana deck.
Yeah.
Yep. One of my decks is a Moana deck. The other one is an Aladdin deck. I love the real good Aladdin card. But yeah, I built a couple of cool decks. We've been messing around with that. Another thing too, with the mana curve, it's a little bit different. You can turn almost any card into ink, which is cool. And that's refreshing too. If there is any discrepancy with quote unquote when is the action supposed to happen, the active player gets to decide what happens first. So it puts a lot of the what ifs out the window. You don't have to worry about any of that anymore. And it's still cool too, because not every card can be inked. So there still is a little bit of play in the deck building with that, which keeps it fun. And then, racing up to 20 points instead of down from 20 to 0, but doing it in a unique way to where when your cards are turned over or tapped over, exhausted, whatever, that's how they quest for their lore points, but then they're vulnerable to be challenged or attacked. So it's a different decision space than any other card game too. So that's cool. Also got some Granja played. The Deluxe Master Set. It was a Kickstarter exclusive like a year ago, and I did not back it, but I ended up getting it from a guy on Board Game Geek. Got it shipped out to my house, got that played a little bit, and a really, really cool Euro just about building your own farm in Mexico. But throws just a ton of different mechanisms from a ton of different Euro games all into one box. There's dice drafting for actions. There's multi-use cards. There's contract fulfillment, trying to grow different items on your farm. If you have 2 or more pigs, you can reproduce more pigs and sell them off for victory points. And it's all just about building that kind of the best farm you can in like a 6-round game. And doing it with just a ton of different actions and ton of different decision space going on too. So been having fun with that. Just played that only halfway through. Actually, I haven't even finished a full game, but I'm enjoying it so far. And then the last game I've gotten to the table individually here is called Sheep Hop, and it's a new game I got for my oldest daughter. She's 4.5, and it's really cool. It's a really cool kids game. We're having a lot of fun with it. She loves it. It's very simple. You have a few different color sheep that are on this board, and the board actually unfolds out of the lid of the box. So the box turns into a game board, and you roll a die. Whatever color sheep you roll, you can choose one of those, because there's more than one of each color sheep, but one of that color of sheep to move. And it kind of like in checkers, if there is a gap between the piece in front of you and, kind of like an open space in front of that piece, you can hop spaces and you can hop other pieces. It has to be orthogonally, so either forward, backward, side to side, but you can continue to hop them like in checkers to try to get them to safety before the wolves snatch them up. So if you can get more sheep into safety before, or more sheep to safety than the wolves capture, then you win. But if the wolves capture more, then the wolves win. Just really cool and simple. It also has some extra tiles you can throw into it for when my kids get a little bit older. Special ability tiles. So like if you there's a tile, I forget what it is, like a raccoon with a sign, and if you jump over that tile, the tile flips, and now his sign is pointing a different direction, so the wolves have to travel in the opposite direction now. So you can kind of predict where the movement of the wolves are going to be, or change direction to try to get your sheep to safety using a different path. So that's just one of the different action tiles you can throw into the mix, and yeah, it's cool. I like finding a game that's fun for adults and kids to play at the same time, because there's just so many of those games out there just for kids that adults really can't have fun with. So it's refreshing having fun with Sheep Hop.
Great, yeah, that sounds cool. It's something I probably will eventually check out for my daughter too sometime.
It's a good one.
How about you, John? What have you been playing?
Oh, like Cory mentioned, I was dabbling in Lorcana, but I think we went into that enough. Finally got through playing all these scenarios for Undaunted Normandy with a buddy of mine, so that was pretty sweet to see the grand culmination of all of that. We did dive into the first mission, I believe, of Undaunted North Africa to test the waters there, so that's what we'll be digging into next. And then, as always, I finally got a short night of some Magic Commander in. I don't know. I won't go too deep into that, but always fun. One of my top games. The relaxing night of Magic.
Yeah.
How was North Africa?
What?
How was North
Africa compared to regular?
Interesting.
A lot more complex, or?
It is interesting how the units work. I'm playing the Italians, I believe, and then my buddy is playing the, I guess I don't remember the exact name, but they're essentially the resistance forces, and they have like saboteurs and engineers, and they're trying to blow up these buildings, so it's very different than having like, the riflemen, heavy machine gunners, scouts, that you originally had that were mirrored on both sides to now these asymmetrical deck of cards.
Okay.
We haven't had vehicles yet, so
okay.
Don't know how that plays quite yet.
Cool.
Great. Well, as for me, a game I've got to the table with my parents and wife was Just One. And I think it actually came originally from a recommendation from you, maybe, Cory. I thought you maybe mentioned this game.
Did you? Good one.
You have it, or?
Yep.
Yeah. So I've been trying to find a good game for actually my workplace, because it's hard to find. During an hour once a week, we try to play board games, and I have a lot of harder, crunchier games in my collection. So it's hard to get those to the table and played within just 1 hour. But also I have my parents that aren't huge into games either and appreciate a less complex game. So Just One was getting a lot of attention. Picked it up, and it was fun. Basically, it's a very simple word guessing game. You have one person that is the guesser, and then everyone else is a clue giver. And the only caveat, but you have to give a one-word clue. The catch is that before all the clue givers give their clue to the guesser, the clue givers check to see which clues they each decided on, and if anyone had matching clues, then those clues can no longer get used. And of course, if that happens, then the guesser's going to have less clues to work with. So you want to try to come up with a good clue, but not like an obvious clue, because you think then other players are going to also have the obvious clues. So it's kind of a fun take on just trying to guess the word, the classic game of guessing a word. I guess the one thing that bothered me a little bit is there's not a lot of game element to it. To me, it's more of an activity. Like, let's play.
Yep.
It's like 20 questions essentially, but slightly different, obviously. And the game comes with a way to keep score. Like, you do it 13 times, and if you, depending on how many successes you've had 13 times, that's your score. Which is like, okay, well, why not 15 times? Why not 10 times? Why not? Anyway, I don't need to belabor that point. It was fun, though, from my parents' perspective. They said that they'd love to do this again. So there you go. Like, I guess it definitely appeals to. There's an audience that definitely enjoys a game like Just One. And then the other game that has garnered tons of attention over the years, and I have been hesitant to play because it was more of a mainstream party game, and that's not really my cup of tea, but I finally decided I'd cave in, and that was Codenames. This time I brought it. This is one of the games I brought to work and played with my coworkers there. We played a 2v2 game, and this definitely has more, of a game element to it than Just One. So I definitely would rather play Codenames than Just One between those two. But I think my coworkers enjoyed playing this game. Basically, it's another word guessing game, and two teams are going head to head. Each team with their own person that's giving clues to words that you want your teammate to guess, while the other team's trying to do the same thing. And it's all right. Like, I'm surprised, honestly, this is as popular as it is. Like, I know it's for whatever reason, one of the most popular party games. I don't know. I don't know if you guys have played Codenames. I'm curious if you.
Oh yeah.
Am I?
Yeah.
Am I just like unpopular opinion here, or do you guys agree with me that it's not like the best thing ever?
It's not my favorite. I can see it's got its place. Yeah, there's not really much to say about it. I mean, the assassin word is kind of neat. You want to stay away from that assassin word, so that's kind of cool. But I don't know. It's just kind of nuanced and depends on. I mean, if you play with the same group of people over and over again on your team, you can kind of get good at knowing what certain people mean by certain things, and that you can kind of game the game a little bit that way. So
yeah,
that's a little bit weird too.
I can.
Yeah, like that push your luck to it. Like you said,
Yeah.
if you play with people enough, you can really do some crazy hints and see what
Remember
they come up
last
with.
time when I said this clue, we had this word. Yeah, I'm more personally into When I Dream. I don't know why When I Dream isn't more popular than these games, because you get to be blindfolded in the game.
Well,
that
that's
game's
awkward. I
better.
can't blindfold my coworkers.
That's what she said.
Yeah, that's a good
I don't know
point.
if you guys have ever played When I Dream, but it's amazing.
We have played
Just
When
make
I
more
Dream.
glasses or something.
I would,
Yeah.
to be fair, of those three games, Just One, Codenames, and When I Dream, I do think I'd rather play When I Dream. It has that much more level of interestingness to it.
Yep,
So,
I'd agree with that.
okay, let's move on to our next segment, which is the BGG Top Hotness review. So, as always, I'll quick run through the changes from the last time we did this, starting from the bottom with number 10, which is now Castle Assault. Last time it was Barcelona, which is now no longer on the list. Number 9 is Dune Imperium. Last time, actually, Dune Imperium was number 6 on the list. And then last time, number 9 was actually Heat Pedal to the Metal, which is also still on the list. We'll get to that in a second.
Dune Imperium, man. Dune Imperium.
I know,
Holy cow.
staying strong.
Not a shock.
With that expansion on the way, as we talked about in the previous episode. Number 8, not surprising to see this game, is Disney Lorcana. Number 7 is called Hegemony. I'm not sure if I'm saying that word right. If it's hegemony or hegemony. Anyway.
No, you got it right.
I think it's Hegemony.
Hegemony.
Yeah.
Lead your class to victory. That's new to the list. Number 6 I guess is returning from the list because I don't have it. I don't think it was on the list last time, but it's Arc Nova. So now I can say I've played it. That's cool, and it's definitely a good game. Number 5, we have Heat Pedal to the Metal, which was number 9 on the list last time. Number 4, we have Joyride Survival of the Fastest, which is new. Number 3, we have Freelancers, a Crossroads game, which is new to the list from last time. Number 2, we have Age of Innovation, which is also new to the list from last time. And then finally at number 1, we have Voidfall, which was actually number 2 when we last did this breakdown of the top hotness list. Now, I want to go back to number 10, the Castle Assault game, because I actually just found out about this recently. The reason it's so high, well, you can see if you go, I'm looking at the...
Because you assault castles, I'm assuming.
I'm looking at the Board Game Geek page right now for those of you listening, and it's number 10 it's number 10 on the list, but it has a 4.1 rating, and that's because apparently people involved with the company or the people that own the company were the ones that are currently being are convicted or are indicted, or I don't know what the right legal term is, but they seem to be the ones that stole $300,000 worth of Magic cards from Gen Con. And yeah,
interesting.
I know. I heard. So the story of $300,000 of Jet Magic cards being stolen from Gen Con came out like right the day it happened, but it seems only recently maybe that it was found out that it was these guys from this Castle Assault company. I don't know the details of it, but point of all of me saying this is that's why it's number 10 on the list right now of the BGG Hotness, not because I think the game is considered interesting or good or anything like that. So, and the other game that stood out to me on the list was just Freelancers, which is a Crossroads game, which I understand to mean is a, cousin or whatever, brother, sister of
Dead of Winter.
Dead of Winter.
Yep, thank you. Don't know anything about it, but I thought the concept of Dead of Winter was interesting, so that kind of sparks my interest for Freelancers. Yeah, and it is published by Plaid Hat Games, so then yeah, it's definitely a distant relative of the mechanics of Dead of Winter, but I don't know, it looks interesting just looking at the pictures of it. It's did you guys have any game that you wanted to discuss more?
Doom Imperium's still on the list. Let's go.
Let's go.
Disney Lorcana, definitely. Not a surprise either. I have a feeling that one might stick around for a while, especially as new expansions and whatnot come out.
So it's got a 7.1 on Board Game Geek right now, and that could mean so many different things. It could just mean that there's people upset for some reason with Disney Lorcana. I mean, from your perspective, do you think it is just only a 7.1 game, or does it?
7.1 might be fair for now too. It's just the first chapter. There's not like a ton of cards you can really mess around with.
Yep.
It's like go back to like the base, alpha or beta Magic cards and just go play a couple of games of that. It's going to be very basic. Side note, is Nightmare Before Christmas a Disney movie?
It will never be in Lorcana.
I hope so.
But you hope it isn't or is?
I hope it is, because that would be really cool. That would be really cool.
Insane.
Jack Skellington and Oogie Boogie and all that would be sweet. Just in time. Well, it's not going to come out for Halloween, but maybe next year. So I thought it was a Disney movie, but
so the only thing so Nightmare Before Christmas. I've got the Wikipedia page up. Originated in a poem by Burton in 1982 while he was working as an animator at Walt Disney Productions. He blah blah blah. The film has been reissued by Walt Disney Pictures and was released. So there's definitely a connection there. I was gonna say the reason why I like the Disney theme as an adult is as a kid I then got into Kingdom Hearts, which is essentially the video game version of Lorcana, in my opinion, like kind of an adult game with the Disney theme. Not that kids can't play Lorcana, but it's definitely meant for people that are into Magic too. And Disney or Kingdom Hearts was like the Disney themed Final Fantasy. So Final Fantasy to Kingdom Hearts was like Magic to Lorcana is my analogy in my head. So that pulled me into that Disney theme, and so then seeing it in a card game also is appealing to me. But there was a level in Kingdom Hearts which was the Nightmare Before Christmas world. So
yeah, that's right.
I was thinking.
Oh,
So it must be.
So to your point, Cory, I heard people rumoring even a Kingdom Hearts kind of deck for Lorcana, which would maybe get me really into the game to see like the main character from that franchise, Sora, and all the bad guys too, called the Heartless and stuff like that. So
and Mickey. There's a lot of Mickeys. A lot of Mickeys. I was gonna say too, like for the first time in a while, like I know Magic has kind of been its own economy, and it's created its own rarities and its own economy, its own system. But I think that like Disney Lorcana is the first game in a while that I think cards could just be inherently valuable just based on the Disney IP or the drawings or what they're doing with the game. So that's exciting too. Even if you're not going to play the game, it's exciting just to pull some booster packs and see what you get. And the chance of certain cards becoming rare, I think, for the first time in a while, there's a good chance, set aside from the gameplay itself or it being a good card for the gameplay, I think some will just be rare just because of the IP. So that's pretty cool. Number 7, Hegemony. I've heard rumblings about this game. Pretty much living real life in a board game. I think there's like politics and all that stuff going on, extremely heavy. Interests me, but also doesn't interest me because I don't have really the time to sit down and learn something like that. I am on the wait list for Heat Pedal to the Metal because that's been out of print and very hard to get ever since it came out. I think it's been almost a year, but I'm on a wait list at a local game store for that. So hopefully that comes in soon. And then the game I think that I'm the most excited about is number 2, and that's Age of Innovation. And that's pretty much a 3.0 or a 2.0 version of Terra Mystica. So add some more things to that. And Terra Mystica is one of my favorites. So I think if it kind of evolves on that system and makes it better, why not?
Nice. Any comments from you, John, before we move on about the BGG Hotness?
Nope, not anymore.
Great. Well, then we will move on to the next segment, which is Question of the Week. And this time we will be talking about thoughts on paying to play in board game stores. And this is kind of a hot topic in our local area because there was a store in the Twin Cities a few months ago that started all of a sudden charging people to play in their game area, and it was kind of a shock because this is a store that's been around for a while, and I don't know if it was expected to happen. And I went in there a few weeks ago and for the first time saw that they do have like the section boarded off, and they're definitely trying to make sure if you're playing in their play space that you have paid for that. So the thing to mention with this particular example is you're not simply giving money just to play. That money then can be used for a gift card to the store, or I can't remember if you pay $10 and you get a $10 gift card or coupon.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of the controversy came originally, because the policy on that $10 changed. I don't know if I'd say rapidly, but fairly quickly, multiple times.
What is the current state of the policy? Do you know?
Yeah, you pay $10 to play in the play space, get a voucher for that $10 back, and it can now be spent on anything: food, drinks,
really?
card games, board games.
Okay.
So
if it's food and drinks, that's a huge game change. Huge
now,
game change.
In my opinion,
all right,
100% worthwhile.
Okay.
If you're getting a voucher solely
wrong
for board games, I think that's where the controversy lied. But it has since been tidied up, and I think, like you said, if you can buy food and drink there, which I'd argue a lot of people already were, that's pretty fair. And I think as a business decision, it's fair to require the $10 to have people play there, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that were buying nothing and essentially getting a free place to play, and that's tough as a business. I get that.
Yeah, so I think of me and my dad. My dad's like 45 minutes away from me, and we've met at the store a couple of times to play games prior to this policy. And I was like, well, I'm not going to have my dad drive all the way out there to pay $10 to play games with me. Like, that would be dumb. So we'll just now go someplace else that's between us. But when we did go there, we definitely spent at least probably over $20 on food and drinks from their restaurant that they have. So I think that's a reasonable expectation, and if they have to enforce it that way, that you pay $10 up front then that's fine. However, then that begs the question, this place has can serve alcohol, so they have beer and wine options. So that's a kind of a big deal too when it comes to and that gets you to that $10 quick.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're a game store that doesn't have that, which there's many, then what about those stores, and can a $10 be justified? Do you guys have any alternative suggestions or other ideas that you think would be reasonable that a store could?
It definitely gets tricky, because obviously to some extent you would think want to just get people in there on the off chance they will buy a game or other product. But yeah, I don't know.
Statistically, the numbers must have not lied, and not a lot of people are buying games, but playing games at said store. And there's not a lot of stores that have a lot of table space, and they have a lot of it. So, I mean, if you have 50+% of your store real estate as just tables, I mean, that's a lot of space that nothing is happening in, and it's not generating any revenue if you've got people bringing in their own food, drinks, and not buying anything. So
yeah, and that's the other thing I'm definitely curious about, was policies being driven by people not adhering to the rules, and like you said, Cory, bring their own food and drink, which understandably is a no-no. You can't really bring McDonald's into an Arby's and sit there and eat. So I understand that.
But have any other game stores implemented this? I don't think so. I don't think there's a whole lot of stores that have a ton of table space. They do, it's just tournament scene for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
What are your guys' thoughts on stores that don't have the beverages, the alcohol, the food? I mean, do you think there'll be a shift toward charging to have people play there if they don't have that sort of thing to provide to their gamers?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Is I think in that circumstance, the $10 for a $10 coupon still is okay. It's not ideal. I would hope that they don't have an expiration date. Like, that was the other thing that initially pissed me off about the original policy of the other.
It was like 30 days.
Yeah, like 30 days, and I'm like, well, like I was saying in my example with my dad, we're going there because it was a good midway point, and we might only go there once every few months. So it's like, I'm not going to drive way back out there just to now spend my coupon to get a game.
Or feel pressure to purchase a game right then and there.
Exactly, without really knowing what I wanted at that time. I think that was kind of unfair. So, but I don't know but then that defeats the purpose from the store's perspective, because they of course want, cash flow. They want to get people to come and buy something, and they don't want you just to like hoard your $10 coupons, which is also, I don't think, a bad thing. Eventually that means that person's going to keep those $10 coupons and come back and spend them on a game item. But yeah, I still am not overly in favor of stores making you charge to play at a game, to play there, because then it's just like, okay, I will play at a bar or cafe or restaurant, and I will order food at that bar or cafe or restaurant, and then play the game that I want to play with whoever I want to play with, and we'll have a great time. So, that would be kind of my personal plan if stores just said, you have to pay $5-10 just to be and play in the store. But the thing that I guess I would be okay with, you mentioned the organized play aspect, and it's like, if they're using their space to then just have organized play, that then does require a fee to play in that organized
Yeah.
play, that's okay with me. Like if a store is going to say, hey, we're going to do a demo night or a tournament or whatever organized type of thing for a game, and you have to pay $5 or $10 to participate. Okay,
Yep.
that's fine, because that makes sense to me. So that would be what I would like to maybe see stores try to implement then, if they don't have food or drinks but have a nice space for people to play at. I think that's a good.
Well, now that their policy has shifted to you can spend it on anything, food, drink, game, whatever related, I think that is almost, given the size of their space and the size of the building, I think that's the ideal scenario for any business model, because playing devil's advocate, you've got a lot of smaller stores that only have a handful of tables that are
Yep.
restricted for that organized play every time. I mean, if us three wanted to go down to another store that I'm sure we're all thinking of in our head right now, located in that similar area, we couldn't even get into that store and play a game together because, Pokemon is happening tonight, Magic is happening the next night, Flesh and Blood is happening this other night. Sorry guys, there's no space for you to play. So I think if there weren't any stores with that amount of space and to invite gamers in and provide that space, I just don't think it would even really be a thing.
Right. Nope, I agree.
So, very interesting topic. We'll see how this progresses over the course of the next couple of years, if stores start trending one way or the other with policies around their open gaming spaces. Definitely let us know what you think in the comments of the YouTube video of the podcast episode. And if you're listening via Apple or Spotify, track down the episode on our YouTube channel so that you can comment with everyone else there, because we definitely want to hear what other board gamers have to say about this, since it's definitely a very interesting topic of discussion for the board game hobby. All right, with that said, we'll move into our final topic of the episode, or segment of the episode, and that's what's going on at Talking Cardboard. And first thing that I wanted to touch on was the experience at 2DCon. So 2DCon is, I think, objectively Minnesota's largest video game convention, but also I would say definitely video game and board game convention. Maybe also, if just considering it a video game convention, located in Minneapolis. And it was this last Friday through Sunday. It's been going on for several years. First time that I knew it even existed and ever attended. But it was really interesting to go to, since I've been to board game conventions before, pure board game conventions before, such as the Origins. Origins is the biggest board game convention I've been to. And it didn't seem maybe as big as Origins from a standpoint of big rooms with just tons and tons of people playing games. However, they definitely had a lot going on. The focus was, like I said, more video games, and cosplaying was a big part of the convention. They had a pretty significantly large room filled with a bunch of old school arcade machines, old school video game console, like old school video games arcade machines, which I thought was kind of cool. But then they also had a whole tabletop room with a huge tabletop library of nearly 1,000 board games. And that was cool to see that they were trying to mix that in with the video games. But the best part, of course, was Talking Cardboard had its own panel there, talking about board games. And we had Adam from Adam's Apple Games, which published Planet Unknown. We had Andrew Navarro, who used to be at Fantasy Flight and then at Chip Theory Games, and now has his own company called Earthborn, which is publishing Earthborn Rangers. And then we had a guy named Jim Cartwright, who works as his strategy director now at Fantasy Flight Games. And then two local board game stores. We had a representative from Games by James, which is a chain of board game friendly local game stores in the Twin Cities area, and then a representative from the Source Comics and Games, which is also a large board game store in the Twin Cities area. And that was a blast to have them answer questions about the board game industry and hobby. And it was cool to see them interact with the people that were attending and seemed like everyone was having a good time. So that was 2DCon. Definitely hope to return next year and even maybe do another panel or something like that. But right on the heels of 2DCon, we have this what's called the CMON Expo. Now, some of you are come on CMON, Cool Mini or Not Expo, and apparently this is normally organized in Atlanta, Georgia, but this year it's going to be located in Minneapolis, and it's specifically at this Game Center store, coincidentally, and that's a weekend in September. And I've also never attended a CMON Expo before. It's limited to only 250 tickets because the venue itself is relatively small. It's not like a convention hall. So sounds interesting, but that's something that I purchased a ticket to. Not sure if Talking Cardboard will be able to have like its own table there. They already have one content creator group called Board Game Coffee. What I was trying to say. I'm not sure if they're local to the Twin Cities area though. So hopefully CMONCon would be interested in having some local content creators present as well. But also Richard Lanius is supposed to be there, who is most noted for Arkham Horror, the board game. I've not played Arkham Horror, the board game. I've played the living card game, but not Arkham Horror, the board game. But that's cool. So that's CMONCon upcoming.
Board Game Coffee is from Canada.
Okay, so close.
Pretty much Minnesota.
Yeah, pretty much Minnesota. I guess that's fair.
15,000 subscribers. Not too shabby.
They also have a couple influencers that focus on painting miniatures, I believe. So, because of course, Cool Mini or Not, I believe kind of started as a miniatures company. So that'd be actually interesting to watch an expert painter paint some minis, because I've dabbled with that over the years. And then yeah, we have a lot of, which is great. Like Talking Cardboard's getting a lot of different games from publishers to take a look at. So in the past, we've mentioned Draco Ideas has been sending us games to look at. We hope to do videos with those. Floodgate Games has sent some games. The Rome Total War board game, which is still in development, was sent to us, and hopefully do a video with the designer soon. And then Cory's been talking to a small independent publishing company on a new game that they're coming out with called Crime Wave, which is coming our way to look at. So a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon for Talking Cardboard. Anything that I missed that you guys wanted to chime in on?
We got to plan our 24-hour marathon too. That's
We
coming
need
up
to
this year, yeah.
do that. It will happen before Year's Day.
That's got to be like my favorite day of the year, so I'm excited for it.
Yeah, that should be good.
So more news from that coming soon.
Mhm.
And well, one other thing, I touched on this at 2DCon. I will also bring it up here, and post a link for this in the description of the podcast episode, and also in the YouTube video description for the podcast episode. But as many are aware, there was a bunch of fires that, a fire that devastated the town of Lahaina. But 6 months ago, I was there with my wife on our baby moon, and we stopped at this board game store called Game Odyssey. And I actually did a TikTok video of it, so check that. You can see that TikTok video of me, doing a overview of my trip to Lahaina, and included a lot of footage of this really cool store called Game Odyssey that unfortunately burned down. And obviously terrible news. The only thing that I feel I can do to, assist with the situation is to promote their GoFundMe. So again, I'll have a link for that in this podcast episode description, but also on the YouTube video description. Check that GoFundMe out if you would like to assist that company kind of get itself back on its feet. It honestly was one of the coolest board game stores I've been in. It wasn't necessarily huge, but there was just a lot of details that went into how they had things on display, and it just was very thematic game store. A lot of game stores are just like games on shelves, and they're kind of boring. And,
Right.
Like it's just like a bunch of wire shelves filled with games, and so, it's kind of boring looking. And this store had a lot of personality to it, and the fact it burned down was really tragic. So definitely, if you're able to and willing, help take time to look into that store situation and help them out if you are able to do that. So with that said, we covered everything we wanted to discuss in this episode. Thanks so much for listening. Once again, I'm Nick from Talking Cardboard, along with Cory and John. And in addition to doing these podcast episodes, we do videos on our Talking Cardboard YouTube channel. We have a TikTok for Talking Cardboard. We have a Twitter or X account for Talking Cardboard. We have a Discord group. We have we do live streaming. Both on YouTube Live, but also we have a Kick account, and I told this at the panel to the panel audience at 2DCon that we're still looking for that first follower on Kick for our Talking Cardboard Kick account. So that could be you. So we have a lot of different areas where you can interact with us, and don't hesitate to try to go ahead. Yeah,
we're looking for our second Patreon supporter.
Second Patreon supporter. Woo! So you could be really important in the history of Talking Cardboard. So with that said, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your night, and hope you listen to our next episode, which will come out in the next few weeks. Thanks, guys.